Everybody. Before we commence the meeting, make the usual announcement that to remind everyone present, the meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and that the recording archived for future viewing. If everybody could turn off their cameras when not speaking, that will provide the usual assistance to everyone in making sure everyone else can have access, and also turn off their microphones if not speaking. If anybody wants to speak, could they either raise their hand on screen, but preferably through the function on Teams. If everyone could actually, when they want to raise a point, make sure that it's done through Teams, but not through the chat function. Only use that if you're having problems accessing or participating in any way, and use it for that function. I think I've said enough there. Okay, if we start the meeting then with agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
We've received apologies from Councillor Jarvie.
Thank you. Minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of February 2022. Does anyone wish to propose those as a true record?
Yeah, move we note.
Thank you very much. Before proceeding further, can I just mention those minutes? The first item on the agenda last time was the call-in from Councillor Carroll relating to the nurseries in Penarth. And as members may recall, I had, shall we say, an exchange of opinion with the cabinet member, and with hindsight on that, perhaps I could have handled that a little bit better. So I'd like to tender my apologies for the way that was conducted. So if we could then move on to agenda item 3, are there any declarations of interest?
Hand up.
Oh, beg your pardon. Sorry. You can see. Sorry, that's not having the right thing. Yes, cabinet member.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the apology. I'm happy to accept that, and the recognition that the call-in, the way it was handled and the contributions from some members fell very far short of what should be expected in such a meeting. I hope this can be marked down now to experience and set as a precedent for the future. Thank you.
I'm sure it can. Okay, moving on then, as I say, to agenda item 3, are there any declarations of interest? No, okay. Agenda item 4, the revenue and capital monitoring for the period 1st April 2021 to 31st January 2022.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Hi, Gemma.
So this is for the period to the end of January 2022, and in terms of revenue reflects an overall transfer to reserves of 735,000, and this is despite ongoing pressures, particularly in respect of school transport, and COVID costs in year have also been picked up as a result of hardship grant funding. The overspend relating to school transport is 126,000, and this overall underspend position is largely due to late grant award funding that's offset in year expenditure, enabling this transfer to reserve to take place. So 2 of those notably are the ALN COVID recovery grant and also the Welsh Government attendance support and community grant. In terms of the capital budget, we have a number of schemes where we are making some small adjustments. We've got reprofiling in the Band B programme, and given the time of year, we also have a number of schemes where we are slipping funding into the next financial year. Happy to take any questions on the report.
Okay, thank you for that, Gemma. Does any member have any questions or any points they wish to make? as obviously, as we move further and further through the year, the position is becoming probably a lot clearer, and things are firming up. So at the moment, I can't say I see any particular issues that we have at the moment. It all looks fairly straightforward. So are members happy to...
Chair, Councillor Thomas has got it.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Thomas. I'm not doing very well this afternoon seeing people's hands, so I'll try and be a bit better. Neil.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, thanks for the report, Chairman, and the presentation just now. I mean, these are the Q3 figures, yeah. So the Q4 figures. Can you give us any sort of finger in the wind type feeling on how it's going in the Q4? Thank you.
I think the main fluctuation that we have is in respect of Welsh Government grants. So I'm not expecting the outturn figures to be dramatically different to the figures that are reported here. So there might be some commitments that then don't. I know in terms of capital that we have got further slippage because a number of schemes have been reprofiled into the Easter holidays, for instance. So I know that the capital spend is likely to be lower than is set out in the capital part of the report. And there may be some prudent commitment that's taken place at this stage in the financial year that as we get to the end of the year, we're able to use grants in a different way, for instance. So it might be that transfer to reserves increases. And also this doesn't reflect any schools transfers to reserves. So schools have also had some late Welsh Government grant that may be reflected in the year-end transfer to reserves. So it might be those transfers to reserves increase and the capital spend is slightly lower.
Thank you for that. It's pleasing to hear it's all looking, fairly cheerful in terms of the budget. Thank you.
Yeah, again, okay, yeah, thank you for that, Gemma. So are members happy that we note the report? Yes?
Yes,
Okay.
happy we note.
Yeah, move we note.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that was a seconder and a proposer and a seconder there. So if we move on then to agenda item agenda item 5, the annual delivery plan monitoring report. We're looking now at the third quarter performance, and David, this is you, I think. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. So as been said, this is our Q3 performance results. So it covers the period from 1st of April 21 to the 31st of December 21, and it relates to the annual delivery plan and our commitments aligned to our corporate plan and wellbeing objectives as well. Now, there's quite an extensive full report there in Appendix A, which is really a report across the whole of the council. But I think what's more pertinent to this to this committee are what relates to the learning and culture achievements and progress this year. So if Catherine has very helpfully got a PowerPoint presentation that I'd like to go through on this, if that's okay.
Has that started sharing yet?
Yes, it has.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. If you just put it on slideshow, that would be great. That's fantastic. Thanks, Catherine. So the annual delivery monitoring report, as I said, is covers the periods that we looked at, and what you have here is a number of links if members would like to look at those, which look at corporate risk registers, sickness absence report, and the Insight board tracker, which covers, as I say, the work across the council. If you can move to the next slide, Catherine. And again, in terms of the overall delivery plan, we can see a a positive picture here in that the overall RAG status is green, and given obviously the impact of COVID, then the progress has been really positive in relation to that across the council. And as I say, in terms of looking more in depth at the whole of the council, then Appendix A would be where we would look at that. Thanks, Catherine. So certainly in terms of our learning and culture now, which is the focus of the rest of this presentation. So to look at objective 1, which is to work with and for our communities, then there's been a huge amount of achievements during this period, relating to ICT and delivering the infrastructure improvements in schools. There's been significant developments in the provision of local youth services for across the Vale, and the youth service retained its Bronze Quality Award in recognition of the quality there. Outreach provision has continued to be developed, particularly in the area of social, emotional, mental health and well-being, which, as we know, is a crucial area at this time. And also, we've continued work in ensuring that pupils are happy and safe and free from discrimination. And one of the key reports, I think, that has been published recently, which I would urge members to look at, is the report on peer-on-peer sexual harassment in schools, and this will be very much a focus of our work going forward and into the next year at least. So in relation to objective 2, support learning, employment and sustainable economic growth, some of the notable achievements there around the 21st Century Schools programme, Pencoitra High School is now open, and South Point Primary as well. Obviously there's a little bit of a delay in terms of when this report was written, is now also ready for opening as well. So in terms of digitisation, then there's a great deal of work on in the library, and particularly around volunteers, and on developing the website, and also in terms of childcare, there's been a huge amount of work in this area, with 3 new childcare offer units opening in the Vale, across the Vale. We've also been working with Bernardo's, our community-based counselling provider, and to provide an enhanced service in schools as well. And what we've been able to do is to enhance that by developing more of a primary offer, and employing play therapists and the like to work with young people. So in terms of objective 3, it's for people at home and in their communities. The winter wellbeing programme was hugely successful, and provided a great deal of activities for young people over the winter period, over and above what they would have been normally able to access. The promotion of our libraries as community hubs and wellbeing hubs, and the increasing diversity of leisure and art and cultural learning opportunities has also been a move forward. We're also working with health around the Move More Eat Well plan, and providing pupils with healthy, balanced meals, and initiatives such as Eat Them to Defeat Them. We've involved residents and stakeholders around consultation about suitable art services in the Vale, and supported arts and culture through numerous events to increase participation. And finally, objective 4, in terms of respect, enhance and enjoy our environment. Again, the work around net zero carbon schools is extremely impressive, and South Point is the first net zero carbon school in Wales, which is a huge achievement for the Vale of Glamorgan. The Walk Once a Week, or WOW project, is also gathering pace, and will have an impact on active travel and well-being as that continues. Again, just looking at the lower net zero carbon projects, around school buildings, I'm sure will continue into the future. And increase school ecology resources to support schools with enhancing their outdoor areas, nature and play. Again, has impact on the environment, but also on well-being, which is extremely positive. Thanks, Catherine. So in terms of our progress in meeting the actions and the measures, again, very significant progress, and this is the Q3 position of where we're at. So the 53 actions in that apply to the remit of this scrutiny committee. Of those, 85% are green, and 50% of the measures are green. In terms of the 8 actions that are not in the green, 7 are amber, and hopeful that these will move to green into the fourth quarter. And in terms of the actions, then 1 is red, and of the 4 measures, as I say, 50% are red. And in terms of the actions slipped, then in terms of the measures, all those actions, or the 1 action is related to COVID, and 3 of the 4 performance measures which I read are also related to COVID, and 1 has slipped and isn't as a result of COVID. And we'll be looking at in the next slide as to some of the areas that we need to focus on going forward. Okay, Catherine. So in terms of the areas for future focus and improvement in relation to work with and for our communities, as we say there, whilst there has been an increase in the number of adult Welsh learners, COVID has significantly contributed to the reduction in numbers, and obviously we'll be working hard to raise those numbers going forward. There's been a huge amount of progress in relation to ALN in general, and a particular challenge for the local authority, for the council, is the provision of Welsh medium provision for ALN going forward. And we have a review on that, which is ongoing at the moment, and working with schools to develop that provision. We need to ensure, again, that that our digitally excluded pupils are making progress and can access the correct equipment. Again, huge amount of progress in that, but always more to do. And there is a need to engage with our families and young people in terms of what services they require. And we're also looking to work with partners, particularly with the PSB, around developing work for age-friendly status for the Vale, and particularly work with libraries and adult learning in relation to that. Objective 2, in terms of support for learning and employment, then again, it's ensuring that we can meet the needs of young people who are presenting with acute anxiety and other social and emotional mental health needs. Scrutiny members will remember not that long ago that we did report back on our work around wellbeing, which was hopefully seen as extensive. But again, despite all the work that has been done, there is always more to do, and we are now seeing the impact of the pandemic socially, which is really impacting on the emotional well-being of young people. So we're also looking at, in terms of the impact of the coronavirus, on ensuring that we can re-engage young people, and that all young people are able to make progress and catch up on the learning lost during lockdowns. We also have developments within the service around increasing attendance, and there is a huge amount of work going on in relation to that, again reported to Scrutiny. Our NEETs numbers, those young people not in education or training, are extremely low, but there is also work to do around year 13 young people leaving year 13, to make sure that they have opportunities and pathways to move into, and that is going to be a focus over the coming months. And whilst we're on track with our programme of school improvements, then obviously we are continuing to have impact of supply around materials, etc., due to COVID, and that continues to be something that we are trying to work through as a directorate and as a council. And finally, in terms of objective 4, then we need to further progress the work around active travel. We need to maximise the impact that we can make around the green infrastructure strategy and decarbonisation, and again, another priority is around increasing the number of visits to public libraries. Thanks, Catherine. So finally, just some key points around the coronavirus recovery, and to provide members with an update in relation to this area. You may be aware that there's it's been in the press recently about work that's carrying on about extending the school day. Well, there's been some very positive work in our Barry schools in relation to that, and this is something which is again enhancing the opportunities for some of the most vulnerable pupils by providing them with access to a range of events and a range of activities, from cooking to football skills to developing digital skills, a very wide range of opportunities being provided for young people, and largely delivered by external providers within the school setting. So there are a number of grants. Gemma alluded to some late grants from Welsh Government, but obviously these grants give us huge opportunities as well in many areas, particularly in relation to early years settings, childcare settings, where there has been significant investment, and those grants continue to be used to support our childcare settings within the Vale and to develop new settings. We've also, as stated previously, in terms of our work around young people not in education, employment and training, all the work that has been done there has been hugely impactful, and particularly around Inspire to Achieve and Inspire to Work, and our need figures are at a record low at the moment. We're also looking at the have been working really hard through the employability, looking at the employability agenda, which is changing massively at the moment, and have been very successful around working regionally with the CELT project, which is looking at the employability agenda moving forward and providing more opportunities for young people to go into work. Okay, Catherine. We've also developed a bespoke governor training package around safeguarding, and as stated previously, work around the school and community-based counselling has developed, and in relation to improving the well-being of young people, the engagement service have been developing a range of training offers to support trauma and mental health, and working with schools to provide supervision to staff, and very recently an offer to head teachers for supervision sessions relating to their own well-being, which I think is a important step forward, because what we're learning more and more in relation to schools through the pandemic is that we need to be as mindful of the well-being of the adults as the young people, because if the well-being of the adults is good, then their impact on the young people is also very positive. Okay, thank you, Catherine. So that's the presentation for completed now. I hope that gave you a good overview of the progress that's been made in Q3. Obviously, we'll be reporting back again in Q4, but obviously happy to take any questions, and both Trevor and Morwen are also on the call, so we'd be happy to take questions as well.
Okay, David, thank you for that. I can see the Vice Chair wants to ask a question. Perhaps I can just jump in very quickly before she does. Looking at the actions and measures, and you mentioned there are 7 actions that are amber, and I think you said I think you used the word that you hope that those will improve to green. Well, we all hope for many things, but how I was going to say, how hopeful are you? But I don't use that word myself. But what prospects are there for improving those up to green?
I think some of them relate to the numbers of participants in different activities, and because of the impact of COVID, then they have been significantly reduced. So it may be difficult to hit the targets that have been identified, but certainly, now that restrictions will ease, then so for example, footfall in the library, for example, you would expect that to increase. Now, will it increase sufficiently to make up for the loss previously? Then that is questionable. But certainly, I think we'll be able to demonstrate, that will be increases in these areas.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sorry. Some of them are longer term, I think, as well, Chair. So, for example, one of the red actions is around provision, ALN provision, available to Welsh medium schools. Now, that is very much part of the WESP, and as we know, the WESP is a 10-year plan. So some of the for that example is certainly one that will be in the service plan for next year going forward, and I think that's the link to the next item, is that the service plans will be very much reflective of the progress so far and those areas that we are aware need further work.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it is difficult sometimes meeting targets, you know, in time of pandemic, and sometimes it's always strange how often targets are set, and how you look then when you don't. I always remember going back many years ago now, where we were marked down on something because we'd failed to improve on 100%. So we didn't, that was almost down as a failure, but it is a very difficult thing. I appreciate. So if I
think,
yeah, sorry, go on.
Sorry, I think the target around year 13 NEETs is an example of that. You know, the target is very low, and any slight deviation, you know, you're talking 2 or 3 pupils can create a big difference in that. So that is something to consider as well.
That's it. Statistics are wonderful things, aren't they? Right. If I go, I've got 4 people who've indicated they want to speak. First, the Vice Chairman, Rhiannon.
Thank you. You have in fact answered one of the questions I was going to ask, which was about additional learning needs. So thank you for that. No, it was very comprehensive. It felt like a very kind of holistic approach to education. A phrase that occurred to me while I was listening was cradle to grave, and it really felt like a kind of wraparound from 3 years onwards, that these children, every aspect of their lives outside the home basically is being attended to, which is very gratifying. And I would like to pass my compliments on to the staff. I know I always do this, but I think you know, a good phrase is always worth repeating. I think that staff need to be complimented as often as possible, because education is the target of so much criticism and so many brickbats. I think people fail to appreciate just how hard teachers and education specialists such as yourselves work in order to be able to provide all of these wraparound services for children. So I was very gratified to hear all of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think, in fact, all council employees are the subject of many brickbats, aren't they? Unfortunately, because people don't understand how the system works. Sandra Perks.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask a little bit around the COVID recovery programme, and you mentioned about the extended school day. I just wondered if you could go into more detail how the children feel about the extended school day, when we will know, you know, sort of the benefits that we actually get from that in helping them to catch up and things like that. So, yeah.
I think, Councillor Perks, I'll let Morwen answer that.
Thanks, Dave. At the moment, it's still a pilot, and the pilot is running until Easter. So once Easter has come, there will be a full evaluation. So we don't have anything formal that we can feedback at the moment, but I'm sure that we will be able to do so after that time. However, anecdotally, I know from the schools and the work that they are doing that it has been very well received by those children. And, you know, just short of 1,000 children across Barry to be included in such activities every week, I think is quite fantastic, really. And, you know, it's the schools themselves are really keen. They know that their children need those additional opportunities, and the parents welcome it as well. So it's just anecdotal but positive at the moment, and I'm afraid that's all I can tell you at the moment relating to that.
No, thank you. That's great, and we look forward to, you know, sort of the report later on as well. But thank you.
Of course, and I think what would be helpful is if, when the time is right to feedback, is if we have schools themselves talking about it. That might put more meat in the bones.
Okay, thank you for that. Can I just ask, Rhiannon, is your hand, was it being held up because I didn't allow you to say something?
No, apologies, it's a legacy.
That's okay. Trevor, you wanted to come back in, or perhaps do you want to let Councillor Norman come in at this point, and then perhaps you can come back with any particular points that she raises. So, Jane?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. We're saying about the rollout, how successful the extended school day is in Barry. Are there any plans to roll this out throughout the rest of the Vale, or are we just looking at a pilot scheme in Barry for the time being?
It's just a pilot scheme by Welsh Government for the spring term at the moment. There are 13 schools, across the whole of Wales participating in this. Welsh Government are engaging with various stakeholders about reforming the school day, and not just the school day, but the whole academic year. And you may have seen, I think it was yesterday in the press on BBC, about talking about moving school holidays and really looking creatively at a school year that fits meets the needs of children, rather than a historical model which we currently have. So for now, it is just those 5 schools in Barry who volunteered to be part of the pilot. And we will have to see what Welsh Government decides to do as a result of the pilot evaluation.
Thank you, Maureen.
There are, however, many schools who do provide additional activities. They're just not part of the pilot. I think it's worth noting that as well.
I think it's also linked to work around the community schools, isn't it, Morwen? And Councillor Birch used the term wraparound earlier, and I think that's the key to this, isn't it? It's trying to provide support to young people, not just in the school day. Now, there are challenges, of course, associated with that, and we have to be mindful of the well-being of staff. But again, it's how that's done, and I think it can be done in a positive way for the benefit of staff and young people. But there's a lot of work to be done.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I would say that on David's point of it being the community aspect of it, the 5 schools in Barry involved are working very, very closely together. And out of Pencoitra, they're using Pencoitra as the hub and effectively as the centre of the community to work in amazingly well in collaboration. And there's a big event there tomorrow about community development as a school. And I know that is what they're really passionate about their schools becoming proper community schools.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Well, you touched upon or mentioned very briefly then the consultation that's going to come upon this, looking at the school year. That's going to be an interesting debate, I think, because I can see many pros, many cons. Be interesting to see how it eventually pans out. Trevor, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, it was just 2 quick points. I guess the first one, just to mention, it's positive to see that none of the targets are amber. There's only a small handful that are red that are down to slippage. And the other point, and I always make it in relation to libraries, for example. So the performance indicator for libraries in terms of visitation is showing as red because the numbers are down. And it goes back to your point, Gordon, about statistics, and I just have to make the point about the contribution that libraries have made beyond people walking through the door, with all of the online activities that they've done, the well-being exercises, the online reading groups, and moving a lot of the services that they couldn't run in some of the libraries because of issues around ventilation and space. They did run them down in the pavilion, so lots of rhyme and sign and that kind of stuff. So those figures don't get captured in the criteria of X number of thousand through the door, which is set by the library standards framework. But it isn't just the people who go through the door, it's everything else that they do, including things like click and collect, which was a massive benefit to folks during the last 2 years.
Okay, thank you. Maureen, did you want to come back with some further points? Yes.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Chair, it was
no problem.
It was in relation to an example that Dave gave about the NEETs at year 13, which was red, as you'll have seen, and that is a result of. Dave did say there's a very, very low target that we had. We're aiming very high by having such a low target, if that makes sense. But that was because at the Youth Engagement and Progression Board, I wasn't happy that we had a target that I knew we would easily achieve and beat, if you like. Historically, we have done extremely well with NEETs, and they will have been green. And, we're doing a huge amount of work, but it's red because we were so aspirational for our young people. But as Dave said, it is just a couple of young people. Not that makes it acceptable, but 1 or 2 young people does make all the difference to those figures. where we have those. And COVID has been an impact, is undoubtedly the case with that.
You're on mute.
I was muted there. Yes, sorry, Rhiannon.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a fresh hand. I've completely right. That's what I was going to say. Sorry, I was the waiting makes me lose my track of my thoughts. Coming back to the idea about wraparound care, I was interested in this idea of the after school and children in specific schools being offered extra opportunities to get things to be in school. Not particularly in a learning environment, help with homework and activity clubs and so forth. And I wondered how much link up there had been with social services, because obviously there are families and groups of families that are known to social services. And I wondered whether there was any kind of link up so that children from these families are targeted, so that they are, because they are the children who might need this kind of provision more than perhaps other children. So that we're trying to make sure that these children are drawn into the educational environment, feel comfortable there, and are, even if they're not doing particularly well academically, they're still comfortable in being in the school environment, and so they will continue to attend school regularly and so forth, even if there are, even if the sky is falling down at home or whatever. I mean, I know from my own experience that lots of children regard school as a kind of reliable source of companionship, comfort, interest, and parents perhaps don't always provide the continuity of interest and care that teachers are able to do, because we're at that one step removed. We can look at the children, I don't mean dispassionately, but we can regard the children with the same attitude day in, day out, whereas perhaps if you live with them you don't necessarily do that. So I'm just interested in whether there's any link up between social services and the education department on this. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree completely, Councillor Birch, in terms of that is exactly what the provision is for, and why we're concentrating it in the areas of Barry that we do. It is to encourage that those young people that might find school difficult to be engaged in a slightly different way, where they can excel, where they can feel that their skills are rewarded, and their self-esteem rises as a consequence, and school becomes a more positive place for them to be. And it's a range of activities. It's to do with it can be educational, but also as I say, a range of activities that will enable people to shine in different ways. Linking in with social services, that definitely happens with schools in identifying young people with additional needs, children in need. And what we're looking to develop as well as further teams around young people. There are some schools are also trying to create that link by having family liaison. I would say officers, maybe that's a bit the wrong term, but members of staff who are working with families to try to create that link, and linking with children's services in that respect as well. But equally, I think it's an area that we need to develop further as well, and have that, those links across the council more fully developed.
Just to add to that really quickly, we have started to have some active discussions with the head teachers and with colleagues in social services about, schools as a hub for those sorts of things. So those discussions are in the early days, but I think that's really, really positive. The other discussions we've started to have, specifically with Pencoitre, but with some of our other schools, is linking some of the offer that we have with our ACL service, or adult community learning, as part of that model. So support for not just the individual children, but for the parents and families as well. So that's a really exciting prospect that we're starting to flesh out now.
Thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much. Right, there's no other speakers, no other members of the committee wants to speak, so over to the cabinet member.
Thank you, Chair. It's quite interesting because I put down a list of things to mention, and the officers of the team have basically covered an awful lot of it. But I do think that one thing that needs mentioning, and it was touched on, is the way in which schools are working together, but actually schools are working with the council in a very collaborative and constructive way as well. And this, not only a whole child approach, but a whole family approach is becoming more and more commonplace, which means that solutions are based around the needs increasingly of the individual child within our schools, and the provision is being put in place around them. Today I've actually had experience of that when St Cyries was or became the first school of sanctuary in the Vale of Glamorgan, and obviously that is linked to children who are seeking refuge, children and families that are seeking refuge in the Vale of Glamorgan, but it also applies to their whole approach to children and young people and how they support them, whatever challenges they're facing. And it was a phenomenally I think it's difficult. I mean, it was actually quite an emotional event, but it was so encouraging to see the amazing work that's going on in that school, and I'm sure across other schools as well. I'm sure that they will follow. I think we need to say that in terms of schools working together, as Morwen mentioned, there is an event tomorrow, and hopefully I'll be getting there to join them. But that has also been supported by the investment that's been able to be delivered by Big Fresh, because Big Fresh has actually been able to inject some funds into some of those activities, so that there are things like homework clubs with food, and that's been very beneficial. And in a meeting yesterday with other cabinet members across Wales, the question was raised about whether or not our schools provide sports facilities within communities, and I was able to tell them that, in about a mile along the top of Port Road, we've got 3 phenomenal schools with 5G pitches and huge sports halls and everything else, which are providing for the local community, and exactly as we said, acting as a hub. That couldn't be achieved without the massive efforts of our officers working with schools, and whether that be from the Sustainable Communities for Learning, which was 21st Century Schools, or whether the team that are here today. So I would like to add my thanks to that of everybody else for their phenomenal work on this.
Okay, thank you for that. If there's nobody else wants to come in at this point, if we look at the recommendations as far as this is concerned, well, I think the first 2 we've done. We've considered the performance and the remedial actions, and the final one is ask that we note the progress. Well, once again, can we note the progress, and again thank the officers for their very hard work in the results they've achieved. Members happy with that?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, sure thing.
Right, okay, thank you all very much. Agenda item 6 is the service plans and target setting to deliver the Vale of Glamorgan annual delivery plan. So I think is that you again, David?
Yeah, you have to sit for me again.
No, it's always a pleasure.
From my perspective anyway, I'll open this up to questions, obviously, but it's relatively short presentation from myself. Only to say that obviously the annual delivery monitoring report, which was the previous item, really feeds into this, because what we are doing obviously continually is evaluating what we do. Now, service plans are the primary planning documents for the council and for services going forward, and it's really based on the the monitoring that's done. So our next service plans will be focusing on the things that we've achieved, but also the things that we need to develop further, and also in terms of the emerging key priorities that come from Welsh Government or from as a result of COVID or whatever. So the service plans, there's obviously in your papers, there's every service plan from throughout the council, so a huge amount of paper. But if we looked at 2.7 of the report, then what is hyperlinked there are the three service plans that would be applicable to this scrutiny committee. So standards and provision, additional learning needs and well-being, and strategy, community learning and resources. So those are the three key documents, which I hope you've all been able to look at and think about, because really it's what we would like is for you to recognise that they have the right actions, they have the right the priorities. Obviously, they contain in them references to the well-being objectives. So the service actions actually linked to the well-being objectives, and also their contribution to the annual delivery plan, and also we have linked them in this year to where they fit into the Eston inspection framework as well. So they are obviously quite comprehensive documents which set out the key actions for the next year, and will form the basis of what we will report on quarterly for you next year. So that's all I would like to say, really, Chair. Just that obviously myself, Morwen and Trevor would be more than happy to take any questions or queries in relation to each of our service plans.
Okay, thank you, David. Well, that was an amazingly short presentation considering the massive documentation we've got here. But as you say, of course, it covers the whole of the council, which makes it sometimes, you end up reading things that you think, why am I reading this? Yeah. But so,
I was trying to simplify it. I hope that's okay, because
I think you probably have. Well, I think you've simplified it so much that there's no one indicating they want to speak, which is well, I don't know whether that's a pity or not. It could be that everyone's so happy with the service plans they've got nothing they want to add to it. But the recommendation is we review and endorse via recommendations to Cabinet. So as no one's got any questions, can I take it that everyone is happy with the service plans and they want to recommend those to Cabinet?
Yes. Happy to recommend.
Yeah, okay.
Happy.
Yeah, well, that was easy. That was easy then, wasn't it? Right, you can relax now, David.
Thank you.
Okay, members all happy with that? Yep. Okay, fine. Okay, if we go on then to agenda item 7, which is really the feedback from the task and finish group. Now, as I've sort of said when we've had meetings of this lately, that it's probably nearly in the Guinness Book of Records as one of the longest running task and finish groups, because but surprisingly, in fact, it only started in January of the year before last. So perhaps it's not that long running, only just about 2 years. I think that's not bad, is it? But can I say this? I suggested that we look at the costs that parents face in education, and it really was prompted by news at the particular time that relating to the costs of school proms and what other authorities and schools outside. I think it concentrated, I think, on a school in Maesteg, if I remember rightly, that was providing clothing, etc., to help children, attend proms without feeling that they were in an embarrassing situation because their parents perhaps couldn't afford what other parents could perform. But I'm thankful to say that it grew and grew out of that. And we've really, if members look at the report, you can see that we've covered a very, very wide range of subjects. And I think it's been very helpful that we've had a wide range of committee members on this particular task and finish group. I think just about all political groups have been involved in this, and we've had very helpful input, I think, from everybody on this. And as it's mentioned, we've taken, I'll use the word evidence from pupils, students themselves, through parents, through teaching staff. We've really looked at this in a great deal. And I know, and it's been pointed out throughout, this is not something where we can actually say that this has to be done. But if you look at the recommendations we've got, what we're really looking at is for this to be referred to Cabinet for their consideration and hopefully be approval. And then that a good practice guide, again subject to Cabinet's approval, be circulated to all governing bodies and head teachers in the Vale. Because there are a number of interesting things in there which we picked up on. I think particularly where you have the situation where pupils perhaps are sent home from school because of a minor, what seems to be a minor infringement as far as school uniform is concerned, where hopefully a sort of shall I say, a more sensible approach could be adopted, which can avoid things like that. So, as I say, a lot of the members who are here this afternoon have been involved in this task and finish group throughout. I'm not really sure who is here that hasn't been involved in it. I think there's one or two. I don't know whether any of those members particularly want to come in and make any comments, or whether members of the task and finish group want to contribute at this point. No. Well, as I say, I think, oh, hang on, Councillor Thomas, I think, and then Councillor Birch. Yes, Councillor Thomas, you obviously have been involved in this, so.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with you actually about the value of the TNF, that and it's taken so long, partly because of some minor unpleasantness called COVID over the last couple of years that has been. That has affected our ability to meet and our ability to progress the work. But given that, we have managed to do a considerable amount of work on this, as you say, and the input from pupils and staff, particularly Pencoitra, and other sources. We spoke with parents and representing their views as well. We managed to do that digitally, online, whatever it's called. Virtually, that's the word. And yes, you're right. The information we got and the picture that was painted by what's been going on in terms of pressures on families where they're expected to buy multiple items of clothing for various sports and this, that, and the other is a huge drain on the family purses. And really looking to address that and find alternative ways, offer alternative ideas to schools where they could perhaps mitigate those problems, and to highlight the fact that it is an important and disincentive to some children when they can't come into school. They're getting told off for having a tear in a pocket or a rip in the they're not wearing the right jumper, or they've got a rip, they're looking shabby and things like that. And there are ways of improving that situation. To hear that some schools are asking dry clean only blazers, for example. I mean, that was shocking. It really is. It really doesn't show that those schools have thought about their the spectrum of pupils within their community, and hopefully this report, which I'm happy to support and promote. Hopefully this will concentrate their thinking somewhat and make them look again. The governors can look again at their school policies and consider why they're asking for these expensive alternatives when there are better solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you for that contribution. Rhiannon.
Okay, thank you. I think that both you and Neil have covered most of what I was going to say, but I think that it is something that would be worth revisiting, perhaps on an annual basis, just to see whether we have governing bodies taking this advice or whether we're in fact talking into the wind. So, because I think that the points that we've made are useful. We have, considered all kind of levels of income and different family sizes, and we've talked about all of that in these meetings. And I would like to think that governing bodies are actually taking account of what we've said. We're not doing this for the good of our health. We're doing it for the good of children in families that we all deal with. So I think if we could revisit this on an annual basis and perhaps ask governing bodies, for their responses to what we've said, it would be useful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think probably most members of the committee are probably school governors as well. There may be some that are not, but I think most are. So it'd be interesting to see how this actually develops as far as our own as the governing bodies that we're on. I'm certainly on a governor at 2 schools. It'd be interesting to see if this is endorsed by cabinet and then referred on to head teachers, governing bodies, that actually it does come to the governing bodies and we look at it. Right, only one other speaker indicated at the moment, the cabinet member.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank committee for this report. I think it's a really in-depth appraisal of the situation with some very, very constructive and positive recommendations. I would be absolutely delighted to take this to cabinet and fully endorse it, should that be sort of the wishes of the committee. I'm just wondering if that is the case, if it could be expedited to get there for Monday, because obviously we are entering the pre-election period and I would like it to go out to schools as quickly as possible. Interestingly, only this week I was contacted by a parent who was concerned on those, but going through the points that were raised, actually an awful lot of it is covered in this report, and I was able to direct her to the item on today's agenda, and I'm hoping that they might be watching the live stream, so hopefully they are reassured. And then in terms of the review, I think that's a really interesting idea, but I just wondered, there might be quite an easy way of doing it, in that I know certainly I meet a network of the school councils once or two, and we normally have some very full and frank discussions on a range of topics. I met them last Friday, and actually this could be something that is put onto the agenda for that meeting, when I would assume that whoever is cabinet member after May would be following the same plan, and in which case it would be a really easy way to get the feedback of the young people themselves, and to check, have a sense check on whether or not it was working. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, can I just ask, you say you're a meeting with representatives from school councils, is that right across the sort of spectrum from primary through to
No, that's secondary school
Secondary,
councils.
right.
We have a network of them, and we meet these days. As you'd imagine, it's virtual, but it's actually quite interesting when I go into school then, and it's sort of you're in real life. But no, it is the network we have, which is run by the inclusion team. Very good network and worthwhile. That's just purely secondary schools.
Right. Well, to be fair, a lot of the recommendations here probably sort of, I don't say totally for secondary schools, but a lot of them probably are more applicable for secondary schools because of the range of subjects that are covered and what is needed for those. But so I think, yeah, that's a very helpful suggestion as a way of keeping it keeping it sort of current and not just disappearing into some sort of black hole that might be a school governing body. And I'm sure we all know sometimes what happens there. Okay, again, Rhiannon, are you exhausted holding that hand up, or
please, I'll get used to it one day, and then we'll go back to the proper meetings, and it won't matter anymore.
Right, Sandra.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know whether this is a good suggestion or not, but I just wondered whether head teachers' monthly meeting that they might have, whether it be worth, once Cabinet have looked at it, whether actually it's directly presented to head teachers as well, the report. But I don't know what other people think.
Well, that's in fact one of the recommendations, that it be circulated to all governing bodies and head teachers. So hopefully that will be done. I think obviously it has to go to Cabinet first, and I'm pleased to hear what the Cabinet member said about this, and whether it's possible to get it to Cabinet for next Monday as an additional item, I don't know. Democratic meetings, who I assume is Catherine.
It is, yes.
Yeah. Well, can I just before you say anything, before I forget, can I thank you very, very much for all the effort that you've put into this, particularly setting up meetings, and because that's not been easy during the pandemic. But thank you for all your efforts in this.
Thank you very much, Chair. That's very kind. Just in terms of Cabinet meetings, I did discuss this with the Cabinet officer before this went on the agenda. In terms of the pre-election period, we didn't think there would be a problem because there's cross-party involvement. So it's not necessarily seemed to be promoting any one individual candidate. But if there is urgency, I can certainly readdress that with the Cabinet officer. But I think we were looking at it possibly going to the last meeting in March, if that would be acceptable.
Well, I don't think there's a particular, obviously the sooner it moves along, the better. And I take your point, obviously this has been a cross-party task and finish group, so I don't think there could be any suggestion of any sort of political bias at all as far as this is concerned. So, well, let's see.
I'm happy to revisit it, and if there is a need to expedite it, I can discuss that with the Cabinet officer after this meeting. But
yes. So on that basis, are members happy to move that I'll move that the three recommendations be accepted?
Yes, happy on that.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for that, and again, thank you for all of you that's been, all members have been involved in this. It's been, as I said, a long drawn-out process, but I think it's been very, very useful, and we've got a lot of very interesting information out of this from across the board, and which I think is important. Okay then, well, thank you for that, and that brings us to the end of the meeting. I have no items under Part 8, Agenda Item 8, which are urgent, and there are no items under Part 2. So thank you, members, and surprisingly, with the length of the agenda, we've got through that reasonably quickly. So again, thank you all very much. Thank you.
All.
Good night, all.
Good night, everyone.
Yeah, and thank you, Catherine, for your sorting out